Hello viewers, welcome to this exciting edition of the Legal Talk Show brought to you by Say What Organization. And in the studio of choice today, I am joined by Honorable Member of Parliament, Honorable Innocent Gonese. And today we are going to be talking about marriage rights. And I am your host, Anna Sande. This program is meant to assist young people in making informed decisions. If you ever in any situation need assistance, please dial 577, the Say What toll-free number, and get help. And today we're going to be talking about marriage rights under the Section 78 of the Zimbabwean Constitution. As you all know, marriage is the biggest institution within different societies, and different governments have got a way of governing how people manage their marital affairs. Honorable Member, meet the viewers.
Thank you very much, Anna. And a good day to all the viewers, a good day to you all Zimbabweans. My name is Innocent Gonese. I'm the Member of Parliament for Mutare Central, and I'm also a lawyer by profession.
Thank you so much for joining us, Honorable. So today we're going to be introspecting about the LGBTQI community, and then this community is advocating for the recognition of their marital rights in Zimbabwe. How justifiable is that?
I think it depends from what context one is looking at it. When you look at the provisions of Section 78 of our Constitution, it is very explicit that same-sex marriage is prohibited. When it came to the crafting of the new Constitution, there was a very heated debate. In other jurisdictions, they got a non-discrimination clause, and in our case, we also have one, which is Section 56 of the Constitution. Unfortunately, it does not include sexual orientation among the grounds upon which one should not be discriminated against. It talks of race, it talks of tribe, it talks of gender, place of origin, and so on and so forth. And the framers of the Constitution are grappled with this issue, which unfortunately is very divisive in terms of the perceptions of different sections of our Zimbabwean society. So from a legal and a constitutional perspective, it is not possible for that to be recognized unless you have an amendment to the Constitution. It did not be for that specific clause. One could then have a scenario like what happened in other jurisdictions. I think in South Africa, for example, where you have a specific clause which includes a sexual orientation, or in the United States of America, there was the landmark case of Obergefell versus Hodges, where this matter went all the way up to the Supreme Court. But because they don't have provisions which are very explicit, it gives latitude to the judiciary to interpret it. And in that instance, with a 5-4 majority, the Supreme Court of the USA actually accepted that same-sex marriages should be acceptable throughout all the 50 states of the USA, as well as the District of Columbia. But in Zimbabwe, it will be extremely difficult insofar as marriage itself is concerned.
All right. So like you have been mentioning within this context that legally it is not acceptable for persons of the same sex to enter into a marital agreement. What about entering into a same-sex relationship? Because right now, as we all know, that culture is dynamic, and as the world is changing, also there are some components that maybe culturally were not previously accepted, but now it is something that is common. What does the law say about same-sex relationships?
Okay, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on one's point of view, the law does not specifically talk about relationships. In other words, if people of the same sex engage in a relationship, there's nothing specific by the law in terms of either the criminal laws and so which prohibits that. However, when it comes to same sex relationships between men, You've got the common law, which has now been codified in terms of the Criminal Law Codification and Reform Act. You've got a scenario where sodomy still exists as a crime. However, if people have not really been caught in the act, the fact that people are living together does not constitute a crime. So men can actually stay together. In relation to women, fortunately or unfortunately, there is no specific act which is criminalized, which can take place between two women. So they can have a relationship, they can do whatever it is that they want to do behind closed doors, and they cannot be arrested for that. And even with men, as long as it is between two consenting adults and there's no one who makes a report and no one can actually prove that they've indulged in any particular sexual act, it means that the law will not intervene and people can actually stay together. But unfortunately, there are other consequences, like perhaps a discrimination when people are known to be staying together as husband and husband. I don't know whether I can call it husband and wife if they are two men, or wife and wife.
Mm-hmm. Interesting, Honorable Goddess. Now you have introduced a component about consent, which is really very important, either people in a relationship, in the people in the LGBTQ community, or those outside that community. I think it's very important that people consent to everything when it comes to relationship. But Honorable Goddess, I would like to ask, for the sake of the audience, what is sodomy?
Well, sodomy is a situation where two men have got get into a sexual act, and there's actually penetration by one into normally the anus of the other, and that is where there is a problem, because that constitutes a crime. But as I've already indicated, as long as there's no complainant, there's no real problem. However, there's what is called aggravated indecent assault, and that is the case where there's no consent. That one is clearly a crime. The complainant is someone who has been forced against their will to do something which they are not comfortable, which they don't want to do. So there's a distinction between those two.
Honorable. So I would like to understand, where is a society, is young people, is generally the population of Zimbabwe, where exactly do we then draw the line between the laws and our cultural values? I understand that culturally, the LGBTQI community is not really recognizable, but then you are mentioning that within the Constitution, same-sex marriage is not prohibited. Then where do we meet? The Constitution, the law, or together with our cultural norms and values? I
think first there's a point of a clarification. Same-sex marriage is actually prohibited,
yes.
But it's the relationships which I said is very difficult to really legislate against. But as you've already alluded to, culture is also dynamic. And it's not necessarily that is something which is a recent phenomenon. Because if you go back to the Bible, you'll find that there are references to Sodom and Gomorrah, where you had actually men indulging in relationships with other men. And even in our own Zimbabwean society, I understand that the word ngochani is always existed. It did not actually come with the whites. So as it stands, it's something which has been happening since time immemorial. I think where the challenge is the acceptance of such practices. But as society develops, you will find that the revulsion is actually diminishing, as a result of which some societies have actually embraced and accepted that these two things do happen. And also, in terms of enlightenment, there are people who understand that some of these people, it's not really that they are evil or something like that, but perhaps it's a condition which one must understand and be sympathetic to. And in terms of services which they have to access as human beings, I think that it's only fair that they be accorded those services, if it is sexual and reproductive health, if they want to get assistance from health practitioners, depending on what it is that they may be suffering from. So at the end of the day, when it comes to young people, the marriage laws simply prohibit those who are below the age of 18 from entering into a valid marriage. But there's also a raging debate as to whether the age of consent to sexual intercourse should be raised from 16 to 18. But be that as it may, I think the crux of the matter is access to services so that people can get benefits of education, what things to do, what to avoid in terms of diseases, and so on and so forth. And also in terms of contraception. It is important that people have access to this. But I think as our main topic is really about same-sex relationship, the end result is that people have got different perceptions. They are conservative members of our society. They are liberal members of our society. There are also other aspects. We talked about culture. There's also the religious aspect. And people use religion to say that these things are abominable. So it really depends on where one is coming from.
I think it's very critical that we go back to our cultural norms and values and try not to discriminate another person just because of their gender or sexual orientation. At the end of the day, there is that key component that comes to do with the access to services, not just other economic services, but to be specific, access to sexual and reproductive health services. I would like to know, is there any specific law that prohibits people who are in the LGBTQI community from not accessing sexual and reproductive health services?
No, there isn't really. I think it's just a question of bias and also lack of acceptance. So that if they go there and it is known that this is, their condition or their status or whatever, that if they approach some practitioners, health practitioners, who may have that actual bias. But in relation to sexual orientation, the battle was lost during the framing or the crafting of the new constitution, because there was actually a debate whether that clause should have been included. Unfortunately, the majority of the people who participated in the making of the new constitution, after having the views of the public, who unfortunately are generally against same-sex relationship, ended up following the majority views which had been expressed during the consultation process. But having said that, the fact that it's a clause or a phrase which was not specifically included does not detract from the fact that our laws do not specifically speak to relationships. They only speak to specific acts, and as I've already alluded to, when it comes to women, there's no actual law, even in terms of their relationship or sexual conduct, which is criminalized. And even with men, the difference is almost the same, because unless people catch them in the act, if there's no complainant, if people are consenting, it will just pass without any hindrance or any problem. But at the end of the day, I think it's a question of society adapting to what is happening, whereby there should be a general understanding, a general acceptance that some of these things happen, and people should not be discriminated against on the basis of something which may be beyond their control. Unfortunately, I'm not a medical practitioner who can say specifically as to whether this is because of intrinsic evil or it is because of their own condition which they cannot control.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Honorable. I think it's high time as a society we should try to, like what you said, the component of acceptance. Let's accept that people are different. We are living in a diverse universe. People have got different characteristics, they've got different traits, and for them maybe to be in that kind of a situation, it may be, it's more, in most cases, it's beyond their reasonable imagination. Maybe it's biotics, maybe it's biological, or maybe it's environmental. There are so many causes. But then the religion, the society, and every one of us have got a role to play in terms of eliminating discrimination against people living in the LGBTQI community. What is the role, according to your perspective, concerning the role of Parliament in trying to eliminate discrimination against people in the LGBTQI community?
I think one must understand firstly that Parliament does not operate in a vacuum. The legislators also come from the different communities. So in my view, it's not just about Parliament. I think it should really start at the societal level. And we've talked of a wide community. It's not just about gays and lesbians. It now transcends or extends to people who are intersex. So when you look at those scenarios, it is, I think, important to understand that there are people who have been born different. There are those people who feel that they are in the wrong body. They may have been born male but project themselves as female, and vice versa. People have been going through sex change operations and so on and so forth. So it is imperative for there to be that kind of understanding. But as I've already alluded to, I think it is important for civil society organizations, for different sectors in the society to start advocating for this non-discrimination. Because if Parliament were to enact laws which do not find resonance with the general population, it becomes problematic. So I think it's something we should move together as a country, so that on one end, we've got the community understanding, the community acceptance. And I think that it needs a lot of sensitization, a lot of conscientization, so that people do not continue holding on to beliefs which may be outdated in the modern community that we are now living in. And we must also be looking at what is happening in other countries, because we are not an island. And I think we should be cognizant that some societies have moved on, and it is important that we have that realization. It's not an event, but it's going to be a long process. And for Parliament, it's not going to be easy to do things which do not find acceptance, which do not resonate with the general public. I think that is the crux of the matter. We must have a situation where there's resonance with what society expects.
Well, there you have it, viewers. It has been an interesting and a very insightful conversation today. Honorable, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Amen. So guys, if you need any help, please call 577, and don't forget to follow all the Say What Facebook pages. Until we meet again.